Thank you to the Moving the Needle corporate sponsors, Home Infusion Options and Metro Infusion Center, and our exhibitors, Takeda, Janssen, and Bristol-Myers Squibb. You share our mission of advancing patient care and make events like this and our grant making possible.
So with that, I'm going to get into our first session, which I have the privilege of moderating. You're about to hear from some of my colleagues who will join me up here. So I'm going to ask Dr. Dalal, Dr. Krugliak Cleveland, Dr. McDonald, Dr. Verma, and Dr. Williams to all take your seats up here. And while you're doing that, I'm going to tell the audience a little bit more about what this section is. So what you're about to see is going to be a review of some of the inflammatory conditions of the bowel. And then we have a section that's going to be on some of the other types of problems that we're trying to tackle. And then we're going to end by talking about high-risk cancers. So within this group, you're going to hear a little bit more about inflammatory bowel disease, which includes Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis. You're going to hear about celiac disease, which is a gluten enteropathy, an immune condition of the intestines related to exposure to the wheat protein gluten, as well as some other conditions. And this also includes people who are suffering from food allergies and a separate condition called gluten intolerance. The University of Chicago, under Jean Chang's leadership, has had their own NIH-funded core facility that has focused on a variety of different specific problems. A core facility means that it has the resources for people from all walks of life within our institution to use those resources for the science that they want to perform. The core facility under Jean's leadership used to be focused on the types of cells lining the bowel, which you're going to hear a little bit about. And then he was visionary in translating that into a microbiome-based core. And I still remember the first time Dr. Chang said he was going to convert our core into a microbiome core. And I said, what's a microbiome? And he was way ahead of what everyone else later learned and how important that was. And over the years now, it's now been changed the name to the Center for Interdisciplinary Studies of Inflammatory Disorders. So the reason this is obviously important, I think you all know, but I will share with you some advances that have occurred. One of which is the recognition that IBD is rising all over the world. In the time of Dr. Kersner and my grandmother who had Crohn's, this was a condition that was thought to be present only in the Western Hemisphere and in people who lived in the developed world, and it was mostly white people, and there was a higher predominance of Jews who had these conditions. And we now see inflammatory bowel disease all over the world, everywhere you look, including even in sub-Saharan Africa. And it's not entirely clear why it's rising, although I bet everyone in the room is thinking it's the diet. And it's not necessarily the individual foods. What it actually appears to be, perhaps, is how food is prepared and how food is stored. But you can see from this very nice review here that IBD is rising everywhere we look. So it's become an important problem. In the United States, it's estimated that 1 out of 100 people may have IBD now, which is significantly higher than we used to think it was. Similarly, celiac disease, a condition in which people develop literally an immune reaction to wheat proteins and a variety of other types of proteins, is rising around the world as well. And as are food allergies and conditions of eosinophils in the esophagus that some of you may have heard of, and recognizing that these other immune conditions are rising, it leads us to think about what is changing. It's not our genetics. What's changing is the environment in a variety of different ways. And clearly we need to understand further how to study and how to treat and how to prevent some of these conditions. So on my left and on my right are some experts who are working to address these problems, and you're going to hear briefly from each of them. They each have been funded by the GI Research Foundation. And the whole concept of moving the needle is about that general principle of moving a needle that measures progress or a metric of some kind. The needle in your car measures how much gas you have or don't. In this case, we're measuring our progress to fight and understand scientific problems and advance the science of GI diseases.